So what's your approach, or how do you advise law firm owners that have the vision, the big vision, and they want to get there and grow fast? How do you balance and allocate resources and figure out how to do it and not get ahead of your skis, so to speak?
Yeah, there's several things that I can go into here, but one is still goes back to that strategic planning discussion, because one of the exercises that we do with firms when we go into that is, let's just pretend you did have 10 million. Now, I know you're bootstrapping, don't have two nickels to rub together, but let's pretend that you got $1 billion on this. What would you do? And we start, we listen, we can provide input, but what are the pain points? Where do they see them? And so we get this list of things, and then based on what we've known with what we've already talked about, the metrics and the, having mentally healthy people work with you and those kind of things, where does this fit in?
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. So this is going to be a little bit different episode. Usually I interview founders of law firms, but today we're doing something a little different. I am interviewing a founder, but he is not a founder of a law firm. He's founder of a consulting firm that consults with law firms. And we're going to talk about a few topics to dive in about things that hopefully will help you run your firms better. So today we've got Tim McKey. He's the CEO and owner of Vista Consulting. He's worked with over 250, maybe more law firms in his career as a consultant. I'll let him maybe give a little bit more information on exactly what he does and what he's done. So Tim, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Why don't you tell us about yourself?
No, I appreciate it. And am I the first non-lawyer that you're interviewing, Jonathan?
You are.
Wow.
You are.
Wow, okay. So we're starting off plowing new ground here. So all good. Well, look, certainly thank you for having me. And just to tell your audience a little bit, Jonathan and I met on opposite sides of a buy-sell transaction a year or so ago. And even though we were on opposite sides, I felt like we were working toward a common goal. So it was a very interesting thing. And I think we developed a friendship from there. But yes, I'm the owner and CEO of Vista Consulting, and we work primarily with plaintiff law firms. So I know your audience, Jonathan, or I think I know because I've listened to the podcast, your audience is a little bit broader than just plaintiff firms. So a lot of the things I'm going to say today probably just are naturally geared toward plaintiff firms, but I think they will apply across the board. So that's all good. And yes, I'm not a lawyer. I'm actually a CPA. Was totally immersed in the CPA world for 18 years, and then made not really a career change, but a different focus. At my firm, we decided we want to help not just keep the score, but to affect the score. So we started a consulting firm, and one of the businesses that, for lack of a better word, drank the Kool-Aid with us and said, "Hey, we want you to help us look at our operations and become more efficient and effective at what we do, and therefore more profitable." Happened to be a personal injury law firm, and we got a lot of traction there. They actually hired a COO there that became a really good friend and founded Vista with me. His name's Chad Dudley. If I said it was Chad Dudley, it still is Chad Dudley. And he's around. He's a really good friend of mine and really helped kick off Vista. But we're a full service operational firm that looks at systems and processes within plaintiff firms to help them become more efficient and effective, which is a very broad area. But we've got a methodology that we use. We don't have a cookie cutter of what comes out of that methodology, because every firm is different. Every firm has different protocols and systems that they're currently using, and our MO is to help them be better at that. So that's what Vista does, along with working with some M&A, merger and acquisition type deals and that kind of thing. So I hope that gives you a little bit of background.
So let me ask, I know Vista does a lot of stuff, and you said systems and operations, but you also have a financial component as well. I mean, you're a CPA, so you help with some of the financial part.
Yeah,
Pieces as well.
we didn't totally throw the baby out with the bathwater when we started into the consulting business. We look at operational metrics, and I think that was really came from our CPA background, looking at financial metrics, and we still do that within our consulting business. We actually have an area that focuses on part-time, or what we call fractional CFO, Chief Financial Officer work for some of our clients. I was asked the other day, who needs a CFO? And quite honestly, everybody does, but everybody can't afford a COO. So what we've been able to do is kind of carve down certain things that COOs do and do it on a part-time basis for plaintiff firms, and it's been working out very well.
And so, like you mentioned, we met a little over a year ago or so, year and a half maybe. I lose track of time, but it was on other sides, opposite sides of a M&A transaction, a pretty big one, sort of PI firm, obviously, which is what you work on. I mean, that's how we got to know each other. But, clearly, you've worked with a lot of firms, so you're on the operations side and on the financial side. So you've seen the insides of a lot of firms. Probably you've seen a lot of firms evolve over time, so you can sort of see what has worked and what hasn't worked. And so I want to lean into that experience and dive into a few topics today and sort of hopefully share some wisdom for the other owners out there that maybe they can say, hey, these are some things I can do. So maybe I'll just start with this. I'm going to ask a big, broad question and see where we go from there. But, are there any things or any commonalities that you have found of what the best performing firms sort of share in common, at least from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I give a presentation when I get a chance. One of those give different presentations, but I have one that talks about the characteristics of the top performing firms. So that's exactly what you asked. There's probably 10 or 12 of those. I'll try to hit a few here, and maybe I'm certainly not going to have time to go deep on a lot of these characteristics, if you will, of the top performing plaintiff firms. But I think there's some that we might want to dig in on a little bit. But I'll just hit them and then some of them and see where that goes. And the first one is, the top performing firms, they understand that there's really only 4 ways to grow a law firm. And I'm going to leave that hanging for just a minute. We'll come back to that one because that's probably the biggest one. Okay. They know that they have to work on their business as opposed to just in it. And what I mean by that is, you are running a business that happens to practice law. We can get into discussions we have gotten into discussions with lawyers before. Hey, this is our operation is different. Well, it is, but if you don't make a profit, you're not going to be doing it very long. So learning some of the tricks, not tricks, but some of the best practices to put you in the place of most potential to be successful is being able to work on it and not just in it. And what I mean by that is, in it would be depositions and case strategy and hiring experts and those kind of things. And working on it are things such as deciding how your intake script is going to work, deciding what metrics you need to track, deciding what people in what positions you actually need to fill. So the top performing firms, they understand that working on it is just as important as working in it. So I hope that computes a little bit. They also go a step further. The firms that are really good, they have a vision of what they want to be. Most of the clients that are even doing very well, they may be satisfied with where they are, but they're not where they want to really be. So it's, what are the things that I need to do? Can I picture in my mind 3 years out, say, of what I want this firm to look like? And then they simply do the things we talked about. They work on it, build the systems to realize that vision. So
before you move on from that one, the vision one I think is huge. It's and that applies to everybody. And sort of the way I view it is it's almost like a filter through which you see the entire world, and it's a filtering mechanism for all your decisions, as you mentioned. So it's like, if your vision is to, for example, move to be a regional firm and cover lots of states, then you're going to make decisions to start opening offices in other states. Where if you say, no, I want to be the biggest, baddest in this city, then you're going to make different decisions to realize that. So I think that's just huge. I think that applies to,
It actually applies to any business. Stephen Covey wrote a book, which was one of my favorites, and it's old, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the very first habit is begin with the end in mind, which means, okay, what is that vision? And, I say there's actually 2 construction projects when you're building a business is you create or build a blueprint first, and then you get the hammers and nails and you say, okay, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to build the firm. And I propose to you, if you don't have that blueprint, I don't know if the house is going to stand. Okay.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Anyway, I think that is, common with all businesses as well as the other thing that the one of the other things top performing firms pay attention to is the actual culture that is within their 4 walls. And the culture generally follows the owner's lead. And, if the owner happens to be a jerk, then maybe that their culture is not very good. And I'm going to tell you, if you are a jerk, to pretend you're not. and to create a system that within of how you're going to treat your people, how you're going to treat your clients, and those kind of things. And obviously, I'm playing fast and loose with the terminology here, but being intentional about that. Every business has a culture. It's going to be by default or by intention, and the good ones, it's very much by intention. So that's another one of the areas that are good. The other is they know the top performing firms know their data. They know, how many leads they get. They know how many of those they want. They know how many they convert. They know client contact, what their standards are, and that what goes along with that is having an accountability system to be able to have some transparency into your operation to see that these best practices, in fact, are being followed. Because if not, you have to look at every case, you have to dig in, you have to have good reports to be able to see that. So it sounds like a lot here, and I guess it could be, but these are what the top performing firms do. And I'm going to only mention really one more, and that is they usually have someone within their firm that is not the visionary that really works day to day on the operations. And you can call them a COO, an office manager. It may be a group of people, but they've certainly identified personnel within their operation that's going to allow them usually to be the visionary of what we want to be. And then you have these operational folks to carry it out. And I say there's one common characteristic of good operational people or a team is that they're mentally sound. And I've got a definition for that. It is they don't allow drama. They squash drama, which kind of ties back into culture. It ties back into working on the business. But, I know that most of your listeners don't have any drama in their businesses, but sometimes it crops up. And to have people that don't ramp it up, but squash it and handle it, at a level before it, escalates is extremely important. And the top performing firms do that. It's almost a no drama environment. And quite honestly, it's a little bit rare, but the good ones do it. So,
and I'll say this too: a good operations person knows how to put up with the leader of the firm that's always throwing them some new idea.
No, absolutely.
They know how to say no. They know how to gracefully say no, not yet.
I call that the filter. They can become the filter and help, really clarify what those owners mean. And the other word in there is prioritization. So you're absolutely right. I agree with that.
So you mentioned earlier there's 4 ways to grow a law firm. I do want to circle back to that. I want to hear what you have.
I wasn't gonna let it go. And look, I mean, I hope that all of you people listening are grabbing a pencil and getting ready to write these 4 down. But to be honest, they're not rocket science. There are 4, and I'm going to name 4, but 2 of them are actually subsets. So you have to get more cases. Okay, that's number 1 to grow a firm. And the second one is you have to increase the resolution value of those cases. Okay, those are the 2 biggies. Number 3 is create a system in your firm that basically wows the clients that come through. We call it, a world-class experience within the firm, because what we want those people to do is refer back to us. There's thousands of different ways to market, but the most effective one is to have past clients or maybe identified referral sources referring to you on a daily basis. And there's a methodology to do that. So that's number 3, but it actually ties into more cases, right? So that's a subset. And then the last number 4 is to make sure that every system and process within your business is as efficient and effective as it can be. And I don't use one of those words without the other. To be fast for fast's sake is not what you really want to be. There's a lot of times that cases need to be actually slowed down. You need to take another depot. You need to get an expert. You need to dig deeper and make sure that client is getting the proper treatment in the personal injury world and those kind of things. Not trying to create anything that's not there, but to understand what is there. And sometimes that takes more time. So that's being effective, and it increases the case values. And so that comes all the way back up there.
So I want to maybe shift a little bit, but
Okay.
I think you mentioned it a minute ago. You said, got to know your numbers, we call it metrics, whatever. And so, I think that sounds great, but to somebody who's not doing it, that can be overwhelming. They're like, where do I start? What do I look at? What are, and I know I've talked to owners that they track 200 metrics, and it's like, but that's a ton and no one can start there. So do you have advice on, where do you start? What do you look at first? What's the low-hanging fruit on the metric side?
Yeah, I want to agree with you. There are owners that sometimes when they start getting a few numbers, they become data junkies, which can be too many, there's just, as my dad would say, it's just too much sugar for a dime. You've got so much information, you can't handle it all. I'm going to say, if there were only 2 metrics that you track in a personal injury firm, it should be your intake statistics, and I named them before. How many leads are you getting and from what source? Of those leads, how many meet your firm's criteria? At Vista, to be a case. At Vista, we call that wants. Which ones do you want? Okay. And then of the ones you want, what's your conversion rate? How many of those actually become a case? And knowing those numbers puts you in a place where you can work to improve them. Okay. We know, from being in those, almost 300 firms, that the good firms, they actually convert 93 or 94% or above of the cases that they actually want. And if you ran your numbers and you're getting 80,
that's strong.
Right. That's remember
strong.
Now it's the ones you want. It's not the leads you get. The leads you get, because you're going to catch a lot of guppies if you're fishing for whales, right? You don't want those. But if the ones that qualify and you want them, you should get the vast majority of them. And a lot of firms, number one, they don't track it. And then if they do, well, they're getting, let's just say it's 80%. Well, the difference between 80 and 93% in numbers of cases, let's just say that's 10 cases a month. Or let's just say, be concerned, it's 5 cases a month. Okay, 5 cases a month let's be conservative again, at a $10,000 average case fee is $50,000. And if my math is correct, that's $600,000 a year. So you can see how, making some minor adjustments and following these metrics will help. So that goes back to getting cases without actually spending more money.
And so, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I've heard lawyers out there and they're like, we close every case that comes in. We close every case that comes in. And you're like, show me the numbers. And like, we don't track it, but we just know. What have you found? I'm sure you've had a conversation with somebody that said that, and then you went in and actually started tracking it, and it wasn't 100%, I'm guessing.
You're right on all accounts that we have talked to people that we get everyone we want, but 98% of the people who tell us that don't track it. So we then say, look, we're not arguing with you, but let's track it. And then all of a sudden we realize without fail that they don't get them all. And it is some other number. And they don't have a chase procedure because they don't know who to chase. They don't, these are the systems and processes that we talk about that are really minor tweaks that can have major outcomes. Just like we talked about, getting another case or getting 5 more cases, I would like to think that $600,000 in additional revenue may mean something to someone. And again, I said 2 metrics. That's one. So that's huge, and it has to do with one of the 4 ways to grow, right? It's getting more cases. The other one is having a standard for contacting your clients. And again, I'm really more referring to plaintiff firms, but being proactive and having a system to contact your clients, because it does 2 things. One, it helps you get more information, because obviously you have a set of questions that you want to hear from that client. Are you still in treatment? Are you any more pains? Have you seen a new doc? There's a lot of things that you go through. And also, if you are able to convince the majority of your clients that you're going to call them, and let's just say we have firms that use different time frames. Let's just say it's every 14 days or every 21 days. And you say, look, we want you to call us if something's hot, but know that we're going to call you every 14 days. And we'll even try to narrow it down between this time, et cetera. Get your best number and how you want to be contacted. We like to do it that contact, by the way, by phone or Zoom if you can. And there's a whole set of reasons why. But the other things that it does, other than just keeps you in communication, helps your client make better decisions to increase the value of their case. If you're able to convince them not to make those calls in, then it doesn't disrupt the efficiency and effectiveness of your operation, because we've gone into firms and asked case managers or paralegals, whatever the term that particular firm uses, how much time do you spend fielding calls where the client is checking on their case? We've heard 10% to 75%. And if you're interrupted constantly, then you're not getting your work done, and it can become a mess. So changing that dynamic can be huge. And again, first of all, we got to track it. Are you doing it? But then what I'm telling you now, here's the things to do to improve that. And that helps you with case value. So if I only had 2 metrics, those would be the 2 to track. There's a lot of other ones though.
It's just that last point you made about proactively reaching out will reduce them reaching in. I've never heard that. I think that, and it seems obvious now that you've said it, but that is huge. There's a couple other things too about the proactive contacting the clients. One, it reduces bar complaints. It's like one of the biggest reasons of a bar complaint is my lawyer's not calling me. The other thing, especially in the PI world, is that clients are fickle, and they will kick you to the curb and move to another firm if they think you're ignoring them. And, it probably helps you keep the clients as well, I would imagine.
No, it absolutely does. And there's a little bit of tricks or techniques that can be used here. Every one of those calls doesn't have to be the lawyer. It can be the paralegal or legal assistant, okay? But the lawyer should talk to them periodically as well. But if the conversation with the legal assistant, whatever the term you want to use, is calling lawyer Jonathan asked me to give you a call to talk about this. Okay. You bring that lawyer and let them know the lawyer is in the mix. So these little bitty techniques, here's an analogy. If I had surgery and I get a call the day after surgery from the nurse that said, Dr. Hawkins wanted to check on you, and there's been studies about this, that is 95% as good as the doctor calling and saying, how are you doing? And again, these little subtle things to leverage your business, to save you time where you can actually be working on cases, it's immensely valuable. And, those are the kind of things that we teach, obviously, but they're not secrets. But you can tell your people to do it, but if you don't have an accountability system to know that it's being done, and I'm not going to go into the details of how that's done, but it's important. It's very important.
Yeah, that's part of what I'm thinking. You can have the system, but how do you make sure it's being run? And I'm sure that's something you help clients.
Yeah, and then again, it's
that's
not
the hard
rocket science either, Jonathan. It's using case management systems. It's using other reporting mechanisms. And I had a client just last week say, well, what if my team doesn't tell the truth on that? That is the one thing that is a capital offense. If they're not going to tell the truth on their reports, then they can't work in your firm. I'm sorry. There's very few things that I am that harsh about, but that's one of them, because all of a sudden you've got bad information And anything, and the one thing that's worse than making decisions off of no information is making decisions off of bad information.
Oh,
So,
yeah. And it's certainly a trust issue, which,
oh,
that's a huge issue.
and look, it
Um,
very rarely happens because because what we do is talk with the people who are going to be inputting that data about the importance of it and why we're doing. People want to know the why behind it, and if they know the why, they usually buy in. It's not a big deal. So,
Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. So I want to shift again. So another thing I'm curious about, in your, dealing with all these law firm owners and leaders, sort of the question of mindset. What have you found is sort of the good mindset or the good attributes, and maybe the things that are maybe, I'll call it, unhealthy?
the not so in Vista we call it pixie dust. And I'll give you another analogy here, and this is a very bad one, but and I've told law firm owners this before. Look, if you want to hire us and expect it's like joining a gym and never going and never working out and still expecting that you're going to get stronger and lose weight, this is not going to work. What we do is help identify what needs to be done and then work with our clients together to see that it is done. And if the owner's not going to back us up on those kind of things and say, look, this is work, what's that old saying? I found the secret, and it's dressing overalls, and it's called work. And this is work. So the people who have the mindset that, hey, there's a magic bullet out there, and we can talk a lot about that. I mean, AI is around now. We got venture capital coming in. There's a lot of different things that's disrupting this industry right now that some people look at as silver bullets. And I propose to you there's not. It is, identifying the problems, correcting them through modifying behavior or getting good reports. That I don't think that's changed in a millennia, but there are owners of businesses, and I'm not going to put it just in law firms, that think there's a magic bullet and or pixie dust. It's not. It's work. So, and the ones who realize it and buy in, and one more thing, and I know you want to jump in here, is that the owners that are their firms are doing really, really well, but they're looking for that next little incremental bit. Those are the ones that are number one. They're the funnest for us to work with because they understand this. And what got them there, which is really hard work, and they're looking for, hey, what's that? I call it the crouton and the chopped salad. What is that little thing that's going to take us a little bit further? Those are the ones that really do it. So,
and so putting in the work, absolutely agree. I want to get your take on this. So I'm a law firm owner. I'm just drowning, and I'm hurting, and I'm like, I just don't have time to put in the work. Do you have any tips or advice on
absolutely
how to sort of put in the work to get there? And then I think the answer probably is you do that for a while, then you can sort of get to the other side. But, what is your advice there?
Well, again, another analogy or another thought is Steve Jobs started in his garage, but he didn't stay there. Okay. So you're busting your butt, you're doing everything, and you say, I don't have time to grow. Well, you're going to have to do something different, or you're going to get what you always got, right? I like to think about it with, okay, if you've got a flat tire on your car and you're bucking down the interstate highway and your tire goes flat, you really have to pull over and change that tire because it's going to tear up 10 other things. But if you do change it, and let's just say you put on even a better tire, then you can continue on, but you had to slow down or stop in this case to make that happen. We talk to law firm owners who feel that way, that they're overloaded, they're maxed. Let's just take a day or 2 days and let's talk about where all these pain points are. What can you delegate that you're not, or you're not delegating because you may not have the personnel or have identified the position. But going through that, and the technical name for that meeting is a strategic planning session. you're getting your strategy right before you actually get to the tactics of hiring the new person, where you have to have the plan. It goes back to the vision. That's the advice, is to pull the car over. You got to change the tire, and then we can go faster. But you've got to put in the work to build the blueprint to go forward. Again, I wish it was pixie dust, but it's not. But sometimes, I don't even have time to scratch my ear. Well, if you're going to continue to do that, then you're going to continue not being able to scratch your ear. So, and again, I'm not trying to make fun of them or be flippant or arrogant, but that's the truth.
I heard a successful firm owner a year or so ago speak, and he said that the thing that he attributed it to was taking one day a week to work on the business. And he said, looking back, that's the one thing that moved the needle the most. And he said, don't do it on a Friday because it'll turn into a 3-day weekend. So he chose, I don't know, if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. And so I hear you. And, I try doing that. Some days the bombs drop on your desk and you sort of get distracted, but yeah, it's a challenge.
But you have to be, in my opinion, you have to be intentional about that. And if the bomb drops and you're busy for a period of time, I think you just say, look, that's fine. So next week I might take 2 days to do that strategy. It reminds me of what people talk about, work-life balance and those kind of things. Work-life balance, I like the concept, and I think it should be lived, but it's not in you have half day of work and half day of not. And it's like work is bad. It's like you might have 3 weeks of very intense things that needs to be done, and you take 3 or 4 days to regroup. That's still balance. It's just not all consistent. And again, recognizing that that's okay. And, certainly making sure, telling your family, look, this is what's going on. Again, I just find that communication in all areas, possibly even over communication on the business side and the personal side, it puts you in the place of most potential to have a better life. So that's what we're looking for.
So I've got a question that I personally am interested in. I want to get your take on it. So, and I think probably people in the audience would be interested in this as well. It's you've got a firm and you want to grow it. You've got the vision and you're like, I want to get there. But, and if you had $10 million drop in your lap and you can just hire everybody and spend all the money and do all the stuff, you could do that really quick and get there. But most people don't have that. They're bootstrapping both with cash flow and with their time. So what's your approach, or how do you advise law firm owners that have the vision, the big vision, and they want to get there and grow fast? How do you balance and allocate resources and figure out how to do it and not get ahead of your skis, so to speak?
Yeah, there's several things that I can go into here, but one is still goes back to that strategic planning discussion, because one of the exercises that we do with firms when we go into that is, let's just pretend you did have 10 million. Now, I know you're bootstrapping, don't have two nickels to rub together, but let's pretend that you got $1 billion on this. What would you do? And we start, we listen, we can provide input, but what are the pain points? Where do they see them? And so we get this list of things, and then based on what we've known with what we've already talked about, the metrics and the, having mentally healthy people work with you and those kind of things, where does this fit in? So we kind of meld what we see as best practices and what the owners have as kind of their pain points. Where are they hurting the most? We look at those together, and then we say, okay, that's over. We don't have the $1 billion, and we got a list of 20 things that need to be done. Let's prioritize. So then you go back and again, this is work and it's not rocket science. Okay, this is the biggest pain point. If we can get this, then that'll allow us to do that. Do we have the money to invest in that? Where can we get the money? Is there a bank? Do I have personal assets? Do I have to go to my uncle and buy? There's 1,000 different ways to do it. And, that's why, I don't think I said this earlier, but we don't bring a cookie cutter to any law firm and say it's going to be done this way, because every firm is different. Somebody might have not two nickels to rub together, and some may have, look, I've got a credit line of X, or there's just so many different ways. But going through the pain points, going through what we know are best practices, and then working through a prioritization of those, again, it's just extremely healthy because you then get that blueprint. And it's just like, gosh, I'm full of cliches today. Eating the elephant is one bite at a time, right? So let's take this first bite. Let's see how we can do this and how quickly. I'm generally not one to put total deadlines out there that by, 3 weeks from Wednesday, we're going to be here. Well, that may be a good idea and a good thing. And we think we can do it, but what are the things that have to happen? So I don't know if I'm totally answering your question, but that's the way it needs to be done, is a plan, and then work the plan. One last thing, and I'm going to shut up. Another cliche is, the plan doesn't have to be perfect. An imperfect plan well implemented is better than a perfect plan never implemented. So get the plan, start working the plan, knowing that you're going to vary a little bit, and, just freaking do it. And again, there's a reason for coaches, and I'm not touting Vista or anything. There's a reason for people to help hold you accountable and to help you have expertise in areas that you don't. Get those people. And if it's not Vista, that's okay. I want it to be Vista, but it doesn't have to be. Get somebody to help you, because that's what does it.
I agree with that. You hear people say you're going to invest the money and the time, whether you're trying it on your own or with help. The question is, how quickly are you going to get there? And maybe if you're ever going to get there, that's part of it too.
Well, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit on what there is, because even people who have very clear visions, that vision gets modified the closer you get to the initial one. It's always that next little bit of carrot. And again, that may be a sale, or just more profit, or, more clients, which then yields more profit. I don't think I've ever seen the highest performing firms are never satisfied. So
I agree with that. There's always another peak. There's always another peak to go after, for sure. Well, so I want to shift. I got one more thing I want us to talk about, and then we can start to wrap up. And that is, what are you seeing? You mentioned private equity earlier. So, we did that deal last summer. I'm curious, what are you seeing out there in terms of private equity? I know I'm seeing some things, and then even the MSO structuring, and you can explain what that is if you'd like, or, what are you seeing out there? You said there's lots of disruption. We'll leave AI to the side. I really want to focus on sort of this outside investment coming.
Yeah, we can put AI to the side, but after I say one thing, which is, it's just a tool. It's not pixie dust. So let's put that aside. It's not going to revolutionize your practice in the short run. But what we're seeing in regard to what I call disruption in the marketplace is, with the aging population, with non-lawyer ownership, at least in Arizona and DC, and some other states trying to figure out how to play in that game, and the entry of private equity or venture capital coming into this space, is what's caused the disruption. It's caused these owners, again, whether you're older, seasoned is a better word, or not, there's lots of people who have thought that this type business can't be a creation of value point or something you can sell. That mindset in the last 5 to 6 years has totally changed. That, because of the things I mentioned, is, hey, I may be able to build this asset and actually sell it. And there's specific ways to do it, and that's not for this discussion. But that's caused a very different perspective from lots of different plaintiff law firms, and again, probably other law firms as well. But hey, I may be building an asset, and how can I get in that game? And I've facetiously said before that you're either on the table or you're either at the table or on the menu. You're out there maybe looking to buy something, or maybe you're going to be bought. I don't think that's a negative viewpoint at a very high level, okay? Because the things that prepare you to sell are the things that prepare you to be more efficient, effective, and profitable. So that is an alignment of things that firms should be doing. Just the fact that we've now have this other potential opportunity that, hey, maybe we are building value here that we can sell, and there's ways to do it. I mean, heck, you and I were part of one, and I think you and I've been part of others. On a little bit of an aside, I've worked on two very large transactions that never happened. That I learned more in all the transactions that I've closed. It wasn't a fun day when we said we're not going to pursue it anymore, but it's interesting and fun to pursue. And I think if you're a law firm owner and you're not at least paying attention to this a little bit, you're probably a little behind the eight ball. So I don't know if that was the answer you're looking for, but that marketplace is out there now.
It is. One thing you mentioned that I tell everybody, it used to be that if anybody, at least the ones I see or for a long time saw, it's somebody that's like, yeah, I'm ready to hang it up in 6 months. That's just not enough time, number one. And I always tell people, if you build it and get it ready as if you can sell it, you don't ever have to sell it. But if you design it that way, it's going to be more profitable. You'll pull more money out of it every year along the way, and you'll make the asset more valuable at the end. And I think you're right too on either at the table or on the menu. I think you can put your head in the sand and pretend this is not coming, but it's here, and I think it's coming even more. My view has been that, or at least from my perspective, it's been focused initially on the PI space, but I'm seeing it now in non-PI, and I call them traditional style firms, hourly, broad practice area type firms that people are starting to look at and see how they can get in there. So I don't think any practice area is completely safe. Now, if you are, a ultra low volume, super trial lawyer, you can't really sell that.
I agree. The more that, and again, that goes back to why systems and processes are so important. It's a little bit counterintuitive for us guys that actually have egos that, hey, we want to be the man. Being the man and trying to sell is incompatible almost. You need to not be the man. You need to set up this thing to run without you. So Jim Collins wrote that book, Good to Great, where if you picture the flywheel, you've got to push it really hard to get it started, and then you can touch it. You should be at the point when you sell that you're touching it and you're keeping it moving because it's already moving. But, the hard work is getting it started, getting the systems in place, and being able to have those strategic days or those thinking days where you can, get the next bite at the apple within your operation and those kind of things. That's where the highest values are going to come from. And again, it's totally aligned with increasing, your service capabilities and your income today. So you just got to do it. So.
Well, I'll tell you, stay tuned. It's here and it's coming more. So everybody out there, don't put your head in the sand on this one. So Tim, before we wrap up, I do want to sort of ask one more sort of broad question, if you can answer it. And that's for law firm owners out there. Do you have, we've talked about a lot of things today. Do you have maybe 1, 2, or 3 sort of action item, practical steps that they can take today, beyond theory, like do this?
Do create a vision. Sit down and write down what you want to be doing personally in 3 years from that date and what you want your firm to look like. That's number one. That's a tangible. You can sit down this afternoon and take, you may can do it in 15 minutes. It takes me a little longer to have those deep thoughts, but that's something that can be done. The other thing is know your numbers. Go find out what that data is, and we talked about intake case management. There are others, and, call me if you want to know what the others are, but don't, again, be bound by trying to gather every bit of information that you're not going to use. Okay. So, getting that vision or mindset of this is how I'm going to work on my business. I'm going to set a vision. I'm going to learn my numbers, and we're going to and work from there, are probably the two biggest that takeaways. And you can start the process of getting your numbers today. Talk to your operations people. What are they measuring? What are you looking at? Do you know these things? And again, I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to say is getting the numbers as a starting point, because then you say, okay, this is what I got. How can I improve them? And then that starts a whole different thing. But you can start these things today, especially the visioning part, and saying, where do you want to be? And then say, okay, your next, after you do that, the next day is, okay, what are the 5 things I need to do that can make that happen? It's not rocket science, but it's things that are tangible that anyone can do. And again, very self-serving on this, but a lot of times you need people to help you clarify your thinking on these things. And that's part of our role, but do it. You can do it, and that's actionable. You go do it today.
Well, Tim, I appreciate you coming on. There's so much to talk about. There's no way we get it done. And I know you do like 2-day, 3-day conferences and go over, and you still don't get to talk about all of it. So, we did jump around a little bit. So, appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your wisdom and knowledge. For anybody out there that, wants to find you, what's the best way?
Let me see if I can do this right. I'm sharing a screen. Does that work?
There it is. Yep, I see it.
There it is. That's my cell number up there. Feel free to call or text me. And I'm pretty obsessive about returning calls. I'm not going to ghost you, whoever you are. I'll leave a message if I can't get it. And there's my email address. And again, I'm looking. Yeah, there's the website, vistact.com.
And this, for those watching this on YouTube or wherever, the information's there. For those listening on audio, I don't know if you want to say your cell phone number.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it. First of all, the email address is just my initial and name, TMCKEY at Vista, VISTACT.com. And the phone number is 225-931-7045.
Well, Tim, thanks again. It's been really informative for me, and I've got some things I got to go do and get off the phone here. So,
well, thank you. Anytime, and I appreciate you very much having me on, and looking forward to you. Vista has a podcast, and I want you on there, so we're going to do it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.